Welcome to the Faith Ecology podcast, an initiative of the Jesuits for Climate Justice, Faith in Action at COP30 campaign. My name is Daniela Alba, and I will be your host for this 9-episode series that focuses on introducing the basics of COP30. Join us as we explore many different themes at the intersection of faith and ecology, starting with featuring experts from diverse sectors engaged in climate negotiations. So without further ado, let's kick off our first episode. What is the Conference of the Parties, aka COP? Here with us now in the studio, we have Budi. Budi is an international advocacy coordinator for Franciscans International, who is currently based in Geneva. He has over 2 decades of experience at both the United Nations at the grassroots level. He is originally from Indonesia, and he is here with us to explain exactly what is COP.
Thank you very much, Daniela. So this is very timely because now many organizations are preparing ourselves toward COP30 that will take place in November in Belém, Brazil. So what is COP, in fact? This is the meeting of what we call as parties. So it means the meeting of the 198 nations that have ratified the 1992 United Nations Convention on this climate change. So COP is the supreme decision-making body of the UNFCCC. COP has been established during the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And so far, there has been 29 COP until last year. Therefore, COP this year is called as COP30. So COP operates through a combination of formal negotiations among the state parties, but also a series of events that often we call as side events. There will be delegates or negotiators coming from the states that will meet and they will discuss about key issues on the agenda of COP. But at the same time, you will also delegates coming from other stakeholders, means those who come from the civil society organizations, indigenous peoples, also people's movements, as well as from the businesses. The question is why COP is important, because it provides a structured forum for collaborations between different stakeholders on the issue of climate change. They share best practices based on their experiences. They put also challenges that they are facing in addressing the climate change issues, as well as trying to drive collective actions. And of course, one of the key agreement that internationally was adopted in 2015 during COP21 in Paris, and it is known as the Paris Agreement. The key objective is really to stabilize the greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere to prevent dangerous human interference with the climate system. And to achieve these objectives, the first is on the issue of mitigations. This mitigation means efforts in trying to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to limit global warming. The second is the adaptations, where we can discuss and trying to help countries to adapt to the inevitable impacts of climate change. And the third is a discussion about the finance, on how to mobilize financial resources to support climate action, in particular in the developing countries. And then, of course, in order to do all those things, there is also the need to discuss about the technology transfer. And there is also discussions on the need on the capacity building. That is an effort in trying to strengthen the ability of countries on implementations of climate policies and projects. There are many dynamics that are taking place, either among the negotiators, means among the states, but also other stakeholders. We try to make sure that the policies adopted in COP are based on the reality coming from the grassroots and based on the challenges that are faced by the people at the grassroots levels. And organizations like the Jesuits and its network, the Franciscans, some other organizations, we can bring those who are impacted or affected to speak and also to express our concerns directly or indirectly with the negotiators. Sometimes the negotiation can take years to come or to come to conclusions, but it is very important for us to be present there. And in the last few COPs, indeed, that possibility from the stakeholders to contribute had some challenges because the COPs were organized in the countries that produce oil. So it means that their interest is really in trying to put the oil and gas industry, but still to be part of the discussions, despite the fact that, for example, there was an agreement to transition away from fossil fuel, but in reality, that the influence of the lobby of fossil fuel is still very interesting. And on the other side, the civil society a space in expressing their oppositions or their opinion was very much limited. So for us, COP 30 is going to be very interesting. We have a bit more open opportunity so that we can contribute constructively. This COP is also going to be very symbolic because it's going to take place in the Amazon. And as we know that the Amazon has been impacted very badly due to the development, but also due to the fact that some mining activities in responding for the need of clean energy take place also in the Amazon. So we do expect that there will be some more progressive decisions so that we'll be able to protect the rights of the indigenous peoples. So those are the key issues. I hope that this can be useful in providing us with some ideas on how we involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Budi, for taking us into exactly what the COP30 is, why it exists, and why the importance of the upcoming 30th anniversary. Next, we'll look at exactly what the COP30 is made up of. And in order to illustrate that better, I asked a dear friend of mine, Reem Saffar, to join us. She is an Iraqi climate justice activist who's working to raise awareness about climate change and the environmental crisis with an emphasis on youth empowerment in the Middle East and North Africa through her organization, the MENA Youth Network. From 2022 to 2024, she served as a member of the Youth Policy Board at the World Food Forum for the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. She was also the head of the Iraqi youth delegation to COP27, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, and a member of the Greenpeace youth delegation to COP28 in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Reem, thank you so much for joining us. Let's jump right in.
Thank you for having me, Daniela. It's an honor to be here. COP is 2 weeks long. Sometimes it's a few days or 1 or 2 days over 2 weeks if the negotiations are taking longer. Now, every year, the presidency, which is usually the hosting country, they set the themes for that year. And that kind of gives you an idea of what are the main issues that will be focused on. Each country, the presidency of that year, would also want to focus on issues that really affected that country. And that's how you tend to see kind of a trend with wherever there's a trend or a link between where COP is taking place in a certain year and what are the main topics that are being discussed. So there are 2 main zones at COP. There's the green zone and the blue zone. The blue zone is really where all the negotiations take place. And so most people attending are either party delegates, party overflow, which is like if you're not a main player in the negotiations of your country, but you're still attending on behalf. At the same time, there's much more to do to represent a country than just the negotiation. There are so many stakeholders there. There are even meetings within different bodies of a certain government. So you have different ministries, different agencies, and even they have internal meetings between each other where they revise the NDCs, where they revise what work has been done. At the time, I was head of the Iraqi youth delegation for COP27. And I was invited to attend a couple of these internal meetings. And it was a very interesting thing to watch, because to a normal person, to a citizen, let's say, you would think that the government is one body that represents itself and they all work together, but not really. There are so many different, cogs that work together and sometimes against each other, because each ministry might have its own agenda or its own way of working. And so in the Blue Zone, there are usually main events and side events at COPs. And so the side events are usually done at different pavilions. So you usually see many different stakeholders taking part in these side events, either as panelists or even as audiences. Now, the green zone is the zone of COP that is open to the public. And I would say it's the more fun zone. It looks nicer most of the time because it's aimed towards making the negotiations more palatable and interesting to a public audience. But it's where you have families attending, you have younger people. So that's where kind of conversations with the general public happen. And in many countries, if, for example, COP is happening in a country for the first time, it's a great way for people to have this contact with this very important international political process.
Why should someone care about COP? Why is COP relevant to the average citizen?
A lot of people think that because they're not in the negotiation room, there isn't really much that they can do to affect the decisions being taken in the end. And there are several factors that are relevant to this issue. Number one, the negotiations themselves, or the COP process, is a very slow one because there are very big stakes at whole. There's a lot of politics that goes on, not just international politics, but the policies of each country and what they want to push forward or what they want to prevent from being pushed forward. That all goes into play. And so the more powerful or the more political power that a country holds, the more likely that they can influence these decisions. Now, if you are a citizen of a country with considerable political power, I would say that you have a chance to influence what is going on in the negotiation rooms from out on the ground. How? Because each country's delegations are going to negotiate on that country's behalf according to the policies of that country. And so that reflects in the negotiation rooms with how that country or the policies that that country is pushing forward, the bills that they are supporting in the international sphere.
So we've discussed what exactly the COP is. We've discussed what happens at the COP with a focus on youth engagement. Our last guest for today, and to wrap up this first episode, is going to speak to us a little bit about what the role of the Society of Jesus is at the COP30 and what its key objectives are and should be in the framework of the Jesuits for Climate Justice Faith in Action at COP30 campaign. Joining us is Father Pedro Walpole. So over to you.
Thank you. Over the last 30 years, I've worked with several indigenous communities, particularly in the Philippines, in forestry work throughout Asia. I am now living with the Pulangihon people, and I take responsibility with the community for the Apu Palamguan Cultural Education Center, that is a K-12 government recognized school. The Society of Jesus needs to show up at COP. First, to listen and to learn how globally the socio-political stage of environmental accountability is shifting. That's, in our language, basically social justice, social and ecological justice. COP is not the heart of the crisis. It's the pulse. Each year, the COP rises and it falls, and Jesuits can listen to this pulse and learn. So we can return to act with others for our common home throughout the year and act in mission. So, number one, negotiations in what's called the Blue Zone. Jesuits and Jesuit institutions can engage by translating, as it were, and preparing materials on the key topics. The focus for this year is really strengthening loss and damage fund. And this needs to reach the most affected. And that's not to be assumed. Second is set clear targets for a fair energy transition to reduce CO2 and methane. Number 3 is set clear goals to develop a global food system based on food sovereignty and agroecological practices. For number 4, cancelling the debt for poor countries. This has been an ongoing saga that we must continue humbly to present. And number 5, I would say, put the indigenous people's rights and leadership at the center, valuing and protecting nature and prioritizing sustainable livelihoods over profit-driven models where the margins are suffering. This is central to COP30 negotiations. The second area is the social space in the green zone and beyond. Outside the formal halls, we network, we build alliances, and grow the public will for climate justice. Working with civil society, the church, youth, indigenous leaders, and researchers to broaden the agenda and deepen the understanding. This is what's crucial. The third area, if you like, is accompaniment. Most important is to be able to walk with the people, whether at home or in COP, amplifying life-changing stories and local commitments. This is where faith meets action. We are, as Jesuit collaborators, a very small delegation. But we help our partners navigate the process and carry these priorities back home. So what do we bring as Jesuits? We are networked. We are a way of proceeding. Very simply, very humbly. Eco-Jesuits' journey reminds us collaboration across the local, the regional, the global levels is how change moves. It's been a long-standing challenge for the Society of Jesus to engage universally with the UN system. We have effectively done that through JRS. And locally, for example, Jenna has engaged the United Nations Environment Programme in Kenya, UNEP. Environmental Science and Social Change in the Philippines holds UNFCCC observer status, as do some other organizations, enabling a limited collaboration. Our Universal Apostolic Preferences need also to find ways to communicate in a secular world. So, we've been at this for some time. I've been at it for over 30 years. We have learned that collaboration is the method. Community change is the measure. The other dimension is keeping the conversation whole. Integral ecology means social, economic, cultural, political, and ecological threads binding together. We've got to find the dynamics way beyond planting a tree. We have to actually care for our people, be with our people, not just act for our people. Great work has been done on this. This is where we get an integral living of the UAPs. Let's look back a minute. At the time of Agenda 21, that gave birth to the UNFCCC, what was the world busy with in 1992? Well, the whole fiscal situation of Eastern Europe after the fall of the wall was in crisis. On the side, we all who were alive saw, but really, looking back, I can't manage the figures. 220,000 people died in Somalia of famine due to drought and war. That's huge. Here in the Philippines, we were just coming out of the worst typhoon that we could remember. 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people died in Ormoc City that was just washed out. And I attended the Earth Summit in 1992 in Rio. The main issues there for us were water and indigenous peoples. So, where are we today? We're facing the same realities, but we're half a degree warmer. So, we have to understand that nothing is established forever. We have to, with each generation, claim the good that is there, claim the hope, and seek the right action.
Well, folks, that'll be wrapping up the first episode. I thank you for joining us as we explore the foundation and significance of COP30 that Father Pedro gave us so much to think about. And so I want to close off this episode with a quote from Wangari Maathai, who wisely said, "Today we are faced with a challenge that calls for a shift in our thinking so that humanity stops threatening its life support system. We are called to assist the earth, to heal her wounds, and in the process, heal our own. Indeed, to embrace the whole of creation in all its diversity, beauty, and wonder." So, stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we'll continue to deepen our conversations around climate justice and what faith in action looks like at the intersection of ecology. Follow us along on this journey. Share it with your networks far and wide. www.ecojesuit.com.